With Aetherdrift preview season about to start, I thought I'd go ahead and bring you a vehicle deck tech, and this is one that I've been working on for a little while. So go ahead and start those engines. Buckle up and get ready for the race because I have that deck tech coming right up. Welcome to Wizards Whimsy. I'm your host, Patrick. Today we're looking at a vehicle-based commander deck. Now, you're probably wondering what commander that I'm using. I did tell you that I am using a 3-color commander. So it's one that can, really benefit the deck. Not only does it create bodies, it also can create mana as well. So that is one of the main key things because you do need resources. You do need creatures to crew the vehicles, and this commander can produce mana as well as creatures. With Aetherdrift on the horizon, that kind of inspired me to revisit one of my old decks, and it was a vehicle-based deck. I originally built this vehicle deck back in Kamigawa, Neon Dynasty. Thought that was a very fun set. I really enjoyed it. I'm not sure how everyone else felt about it, but for me, it had some very enjoyable cards and mechanics. So really enjoyed the vehicles. One of the key things about it is you get to utilize your creatures even if they have summoning sickness because you can crew your vehicles. This commander creates a body whenever you cast a non-creature spell. And if you're wondering who the commander is, it is Kaikar Wind's Fury. It's a 4-drop, 1 generic, and Jeskai. It's a legendary creature, bird wizard, 3/3. It has flying. And whenever you cast a non-creature spell, create a 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying. Sacrifice a spirit, add 1 red mana. Now, what's great about this is that, all the vehicles are non-creature spells, so you're creating a body. And if you have enough bodies or if the crew is very small, you can actually use the spirits that Kaikar created from casting those to actually crew them. And as a benefit, after you crew them, you can actually sacrifice the spirit and go ahead and generate that 1 red mana so that you can, cast another spell if need be. So that's one thing to keep in mind that, once you've crewed the vehicle, if you sacrifice the creature, the vehicle is still considered crew. So you can actually go ahead and attack with it or activate its abilities. So that's one of the reasons that I chose Kaikar is because of that versatility and what he does. So let's go ahead and take a look at the rest of the deck now. We are running 12 basics. We have 4 islands, 4 mountains, and 4 plains. And pretty much the rest of the mana is either to fetch for lands. It's our, shock lands or lands that can actually, get the mana that we need to cast our spells. So, there's not a whole lot to the mana base. There are some expensive cards in there, but they are easily replaced if you want to get the actual price of the deck down. That's the first place that I would look at, making any changes would be the land base. So this deck is only running 4 sorceries. I didn't feel the need to put a whole bunch in for what I'm trying to do with the deck. So the first sorcery that we have is Supreme Verdict. It is a 4-drop, 1 generic, 2 white, and a blue. This spell can't be countered and destroy all creatures. So something that I normally don't put in a lot of decks is board wipes, just because I like to keep my creatures. But as long as my vehicles aren't crewed, a board wipe's not going to be that detrimental to me because, like I said, once I get Kaikar out, I can actually start just casting vehicles or any non-creature spell, and he's going to create bodies for me that I can use to crew and also sack and cast other spells. This next one is probably one of my favorite pet cards. If I have red in the deck, there's most likely a chance that this will make it into the cut, and it is Winds of Change. It's 1 red mana. Each player shuffles the cards from his hand into their library, then draws that many cards. So it's basically a wheel effect. something that I love to do, especially if I'm going first in turn one, because that can really disrupt my opponent's hands. Now, this next sorcery also pretty much is a staple for any red deck. It's Jeska's Will. It is a 3-drop, 2 generic and a red. It's sorcery. Choose one. If you control your commander as you cast a spell, you may choose both. Add 1 red mana for each card in target opponent's hand. And exile the top 3 cards of your library. You may play them this turn. So one thing that you want to make sure that you do whenever you go to cast this spell, make sure you've not played a land. That way, if you exile a land, you can go ahead and play it. Other than that, you're hoping to have your commander out so that you can get the benefit of adding mana and as well as getting these cards. The final sorcery in the deck is Rite of Replication. It is a 4-drop, 2 generic and 2 blue. It has kicker 5, so when you cast this spell, you pay additional 5 mana. You can create a token that's a copy of target creature. If this spell was kicked, create 5 of those tokens instead. So there is a creature that we do want to make a lot of copies of, but we have to jump through a few hoops. The instant package, I'm just going to come out and say it. I pretty much copied it from my Captain America build. So you have Enlightened Tutor, you have some counter spells. I did switch out some of the instants so that it would be dual commander legal. And one of the cards that I added was Final Showdown. It is a 1-drop, 1 white mana instant. It has spree, so you can choose 1 or more whenever you cast this, and you pay the additional cost to cast it. You have 1, all creatures lose all abilities until end of turn. Then you can add 1, choose a creature you control. It gains indestructible until end of turn. And then for additional 3 and 2 white, destroy all creatures. So for 6 mana, you can destroy all creatures. If you do 7 mana, you can make one of your creatures indestructible and then destroy all creatures, because whenever you cast the spree, however you pay for it, like the first ability, second ability, and third ability, it's going to resolve in that order. So if you chose all the modes, all creatures would lose all abilities until end of turn. Then one of your creatures would be indestructible until end of turn, and then you would destroy all creatures. And that's how the spree spell works. I did also add another spree card from Thunder Junction, 3 steps ahead. It is 1 blue mana. It has spree, so you can pay 1 and a blue, counter target spell. You can pay additional 3, create a token that's a copy of target artifact or creature you control, or you can pay an additional 2, draw 2 cards, then discard a card. Now, the main reason that we have this is to actually create a token that's a copy of one of our artifacts. And when we get into the artifacts, you'll see which one that is. So I do have a lot of card draw in this deck. I do not have any kind of shuffle effect. So I added an extra turn spell in here, and that extra turn is Nexus of Fate. It is a 7-drop. Take an extra turn after this one. If Nexus of Fate would be put into a graveyard from anywhere, reveal Nexus of Fate and shuffle it into its owner's library instead. Besides taking an extra turn, this also shuffles back into our library, so we don't have to really worry too much about decking ourselves out as long as we can cast it or have a way to discard it so that it will shuffle back into the library. As like I said, there's not a whole lot to the instant package. I basically took the instant package from my Captain America build and I put it in here and made a few changes. It has counter spells, draw. It has a little bit of removal, and it has a couple of ways to protect you from dying. Now we'll go ahead and take a look at the enchantments. Now there's only 4 enchantments in this deck. The first one is Mechanized Production. It is a 4-drop, 2 generic and 2 blue. Enchant artifact you control. At the beginning of your upkeep, create a token that's a copy of enchanted artifact. Then, if you control 8 or more artifacts with the same name as one another, you win the game. This is a very slow win con, and unless we get to actually loop Nexus of Fate, I doubt we'll be winning with this, but it does allow us to make a copy of an artifact. And there's one artifact that I really want to make a copy of. Actually, there's 2 artifacts that I really want to make a copy of. Let's go ahead and get that straight, and we'll get into those in just a few. Now, it also runs Ristic Study, Smothering Tithe, and the final enchantment is Mirror Maid. It is a 3-drop, 1 generic, 2 blue. You may have Mirror Maid enter as a copy of any artifact or enchantment on the battlefield. So again, there are certain things that we do want to make copies of, and this is just one more way that we can actually make a copy. The deck is running 13 creatures, so we'll go ahead and jump into those real quick. We have Sakashima of 1,000 Faces. So 4-drop, 3 generic, and a blue human rogue 3/1. You may have Sakashima of 1,000 Faces enter the battlefield as a copy of another creature you control, except it has Sakashima's of 1,000 Faces other abilities. The legend rule doesn't apply to permanents you control. It also has partner, but we're not using any partners. So we really just want that copy ability, and the legend rule does not apply. Enthusiastic Merchant is a 2-drop, a blue and a red artifact creature, goblin artificer. Has flying. Artifact spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. He is a 2/2. So he can reduce the cost of our vehicles or other artifacts that we have, and that's going to actually help us out a little bit. Now, we are running quite a few vehicles, and we do need a way to actually crew them. So I have Hotshot Mechanic. It is a 1-drop, 1 white artifact creature, Fox Pilot. Hotshot Mechanic crews vehicles as though its power were 2 greater. So it is a 2/1, so it can actually crew any vehicle that requires 4 or less to crew it. Giora's Familiars, a 4-drop artifact creature bird 2/2 flying. Historic spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. Artifacts, legendaries, and sagas are historic. Renegade Wheelsmith is a 3-drop, 1 generic, a red and a white. It is a dwarf pilot, is a 3/2. Whenever Renegade Wheelsmith becomes tapped, target creature can't block this turn. The next creature is Magda Brazen Outlaw. It is a 2-drop, 1 generic, and a red dwarf berserker. 2/1. Other dwarves you control get +1/+0. Whenever a dwarf you control becomes tapped, create a treasure token. Then you can sacrifice 5 treasures, search your library for an artifact or dragon card, and put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library. So we can actually use this to get out any of our larger artifacts. This does buff our other dwarves, so any of our dwarves that we're using to pilot any vehicles actually get an additional +1, so they can actually crew for a vehicle that requires a crew of 1 more power than what they actually have on the card. Zerda the Dawnwaker is a 3-drop, 1 generic, and 2 hybrid red-white. So that means you can use red or white for either one of those pips. It's a Elemental Fox 3/3. It has companion, but we're not using it for companion, so we won't even worry about that. Abilities you activate that aren't mana abilities cost 2 less to activate. This effect can't reduce the mana in that cost to less than 1 mana. So all your activated abilities will at a minimum be 1 mana. You can pay 1 tap, target creature can't block this turn. So this is another way that we can actually ensure that one of our vehicles or creatures actually get in by making sure that one of our opponent's creatures cannot block. So with all the spells that we'll be casting, we need to make sure that we have ways to put cards back in our hands. And Shram Senior Artificer, this 2-drop, 1 generic, and a white 2/2, has whenever you cast an aura, equipment, or vehicle spell, draw a card. So not only will we be drawing cards, creating creatures that we can sack for mana to be able to cast more vehicles, to draw additional cards. That's one of the main things that we have with this. And again, it is also a dwarf, so if we crew and we have magged out, we will be creating those treasures. So it's another way that we can actually, increase our mana sources and also get card draw. Giora Weatherlight Captain is a 4-drop, 2 generic, a blue and a red. Whenever you cast a historic spell, draw a card. Kitsune Ace, a 2-drop, 1 generic, white, Fox Pilot, 2/2. Whenever a vehicle you control attacks, choose one. That vehicle gains first strike until end of turn, or untap Kitsune Ace. Probably be choosing the first strike on that, and that is for each vehicle you control. So if we're attacking with 5, 6 vehicles, well, we get to give them first strike. So that will actually help out and hopefully keep our vehicles alive so that we can continue to benefit from using them. This next card, I just put it in there because I think it's a fun card to use. It is Calamity Galloping Inferno. It is a 6-drop, 4 generic and 2 red. It is a horse mount. It is a 4/6. It has haste. Whenever Calamity Inferno attacks while saddled, choose a non-legendary creature that's saddled at this turn and create a tapped and attacking token that's a copy of it. Sacrifice that token at the beginning of your next end step. Repeat this process once. It has Saddle 1. Saddle is basically crew, but you can only do it on your turn. We do have some creatures or vehicles that we would like to have multiple copies of. And basically, when you attack with Calamity while saddled, you create 2 copies of that. So we want to make sure that, whatever non-legendary we have that we're, saddling Calamity with is something that can impact whenever it either ETBs or deals combat damage. Spark Double is a 4-drop, 3 generic, and a blue illusion. It is a 0/0. You may have Spark Double enter the battlefield as a copy of a creature or planeswalker you control, except it enters with an additional +1/+1 counter on it if it's a creature. It enters with an additional loyalty counter on it if it's a planeswalker. And it isn't legendary if that permanent is legendary. So you get to create a non-legendary copy of a legendary creature. So that will actually come into play, and that is one of the things we're trying to do. There is a legendary that we do want to make sure we copy. Birgi, God of Storytelling, is a 3-drop, 2 generic, and a red legendary creature god 3/3. Whenever you cast a spell, add 1 red mana. Until end of turn, you don't lose this mana as steps and phases end. And then the final ability, creatures you control can boast twice during each of your turns rather than once. We're not really using any boast mechanics, so we're not really worried about that. But whenever we cast a spell, we get to add a red mana. So if it's a non-creature spell, we're creating a spirit that we can sack for a red mana. We're getting a red mana from Birgi. So, there is ways that we can actually just, cast a bunch of spells in a turn. There's only 4 non-vehicle artifacts, so we'll go ahead and go over those first. First up is Arcane Signet. It is a 2-drop. Add 1 mana of any color in your commander's color identity. We have Basalt Monolith. It is a 3-drop. Add 3 mana to your mana pool, and you pay 3 to untap. It does not untap during your untap step, so you do have to actually pay the 3 to untap it. Chromatic Ori. Because a lot of our stuff will be generating just red mana, we need to be able to utilize it as mana of any color, so we're running Chromatic Ori. It is a 7-drop legendary artifact. You may spend mana as though it were mana of any color. You can tap and add 5 mana, or you can pay 5 mana, draw a card for each color among permanents you control. So at best, we'll pay 5 to draw 3, or we can just add 5 mana of any color. Even though this says colorless, its ability lets us utilize that mana as though it was mana of any color. Mirage Mirror is probably one of the best utility artifacts that Wizards has created. It is a 3-drop. You pay 2, Mirage Mirror becomes a copy of target artifact or creature or enchantment or land until end of turn. So you can actually protect this unless they have something that has split second. If they go to remove it or destroy it, you can just have it become a copy of a land or an enchantment until end of turn. So there are ways that you can abuse this. The deck does have 17 vehicles in it. We're starting off with Imperial Recovery Unit. It is a 3-drop, 2 generic, a white, 3/4 vehicle. Whenever Imperial Recovery Unit attacks, return target creature or vehicle with mana value 2 or less from your graveyard to your hand. It has crew 2. So if any of our creatures that have a mana value of 2 or less, or any of our vehicles with mana value 2 or less get destroyed and are in the graveyard, whenever we attack with Imperial Recovery Unit, we do get to get those back into our hand. So it is basically a recursion card. It's a very good card to use, and since most likely we'll have some stuff that is getting destroyed, we do want to have a way to get those back. Imposter Mech is a 2-drop, 1 generic, a blue vehicle 3/1. You may have Imposter Mech enter the battlefield as a copy of a creature an opponent controls, except it's a vehicle artifact with crew 3 and it loses all other card types. So it is crew 3, but whatever the most oppressive creature our opponents control, we can have Imposter Mech come in as a copy of that. So that is something that is a great card to have. Or, if they had like a really good utility creature, we can actually have Imposter Mech come in, and then just being able to crew it for 3, it's pretty easy for us to do. Reckoner Bankbuster is a 2-drop vehicle 4/4. It enters the battlefield with 3 charge counters on it. You can pay to tap and remove a charge counter from Reckoner Bankbuster, draw a card, then if there are no charge counters on Bankbuster, create a treasure token and a 1/1 colorless pilot creature token. This creature crews vehicles as though its power were 2 greater. Prodigy's Prototype is a 3-drop, 1 generic, a white and a blue, 3/4 vehicle. Whenever one or more vehicles you control attack, create a 1/1 colorless pilot. Of course, the pilots, they get to crew vehicles as though their power were 2 greater. This has crew 2. So whenever one or more vehicles you control, you're creating the pilots to actually crew your vehicles with. So that is something that is really, really key, because we're only running 13 creatures, so we have to rely on other ways of creating creatures to crew our vehicles. High Speed Hoverbike. It is a 2-drop, 2/2, flash flying. When High Speed Hoverbike enters the battlefield, tap up to 1 target creature. It's crew 1. So this is a way that if somebody's fixing to, say, attack with an Eldrazi or something like that, we can flash this in and tap that creature down. And, that way we don't have to worry about any Annihilator triggers. Or if we want to just make sure that we're able to get in and get around a big creature, we can flash this in and tap it down at our opponent's end step. Weatherlight, it is a 4-drop legendary artifact vehicle. It's a 4/5 with crew of 3. It has flying. And whenever Weatherlight deals combat damage to a player, look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may reveal a historic card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. And again, artifacts, legendaries, and sagas are all historic. Luxurious Locomotive is a 5-drop vehicle, 6/5. Whenever the locomotive attacks, create a treasure token for each creature that crewed it this turn. It has crew 1, activate once each turn. The Indomitable, it is a 4-drop, 2 generic, 2 blue, 6/6 vehicle. It has crew 3. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. You may cast the Indomitable from your graveyard as long as you control 3 or more tapped pirates and or vehicles. Flywheel Racer, it is a 2-drop, 3/2 vehicle with crew 1. It has tap, add 1 mana of any color, activate only if Flywheel Racer is a creature. Now, of all the artifacts, this is the one that I want to create as many copies of as I can possibly find. It is Mech Titan Core. It is a 2-drop, 2/4 vehicle. It has pay 5, exile Mech Titan Core, and 4 other artifact creatures and or vehicles you control. Create Mech Titan, a legendary 10/10 construct artifact creature token with flying, vigilance, trample, lifelink, and haste that's all colors. When that token leaves the battlefield, return all cards exiled with Mech Titan Core except Mech Titan Core to the battlefield tapped under your owner's control. Unless we have multiple ways of having multiple copies of Mech Titan Core, we can only create Mech Titan once. If there's ways that we can have multiple copies of that mech, I think we'll be able to overwhelm our opponents. Shorkai Genesis Engine is a 2-drop, 1 generic blue vehicle 8/8. It has pay 1 tap, draw 2 cards, then discard a card. Create a 1/1 pilot, and it has crew 8. Shorkai Genesis Engine can be your commander. Mind Link Mech is a 3-drop, 2 generic, and a blue 4/3 crew 1 vehicle. It has flying. Whenever Mind Link Mech becomes crewed for the first time each turn, until end of turn, Mind Link Mech becomes a copy of target non-legendary creature that crewed it this turn, except it's a 4/3. Sky Sovereign Council Flagship is a 5-drop, 6/5 flying crew 3 vehicle. Whenever the flagship enters the battlefield or attacks, it deals 3 damage to target creature or planeswalker an opponent controls. Mobile Homestead is a 2-drop, 3/3 vehicle with crew 2. Mobile Homestead has haste as long as you control a mount. Whenever Mobile Homestead attacks, look at the top card of your library. If it's a land card, you may put it onto the battlefield tapped. So this is basically a way that we can, kind of dig and, get lands off the top of our library and put them onto the battlefield. Other than that, that's pretty much the main use for this, is just be able to dig through the top of our library to where we can actually get to more impactful cards and not have to worry about drawing into lands every turn. Unlicensed Hearst is a 2-drop crew 2 vehicle. It has tap, exile up to 2 target cards from a single graveyard. Unlicensed Hearst power and toughness are each equal to the number of cards exiled with it. So this is basically a graveyard hate card. It's a way that we can control our opponent's graveyards. Mobilizer Mech is a 2-drop, 1 generic blue, 3/4 crew 3 vehicle. It has flying. Whenever Mobilizer Mech becomes crewed, up to 1 target vehicle you control becomes an artifact creature until end of turn. Parhelion 2 is a 8-drop, 6 generic, 2 white, legendary artifact vehicle. It's a 5/5 with crew 4. Whenever Parhelion 2 attacks, create 2 4/4 white angel creature tokens with flying and vigilance that are attacking. So whenever it puts the angels in, they are attacking and they're untapped. So basically, as long as we're able to crew the Parhelion and be able to protect it, we will be able to continue to create 4/4 white angels with vigilance and flying. That's pretty much the deck. I would definitely love to hear your input on what you think would be, some more key creatures that we could use or key vehicles. There are tons and tons of vehicles. These are just the ones that I kind of cherry picked. I've cut some of the vehicles that I was going to use in place of, other vehicles. So, the vehicles in this deck can be interchanged with other vehicles real simple. So, this is just a good starting point if you want to create a vehicle themed deck. That's what I'm trying to do here, is just give you some ideas on, what you can put in to create a vehicle deck. Thanks for checking out this video. Hopefully it inspires you to look at vehicles and utilize them a little bit more in some commander decks, or whatever format that you play that you think vehicles could be viable in. Now, I've stated before that this deck is also dual commander viable. I'm not sure how well it would actually perform in a tournament setting, but for casual play, I think it'd be a fun little deck to play around with and try to do. I think it'd perform a little bit better in a pod setting. So if there's like 4 or more players, I think this deck could actually perform quite well. The full deck list is linked below in the description, so go ahead and check that out. While you're there, go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe button, and share this video out. You can also check out some links for Magic products on Amazon. And if you do use any of those links and you make any purchases, I do get a small portion of that, and it's at no additional cost to you. So whatever they're selling the product for, that's what you'll end up paying, and I'll just get a small little commission for sending you that way. Now, I'd love to hear your thoughts on Aetherdrift. I know spoilers are about to start, and I figured that, a vehicle deck would probably be a good little thing to to kind of get people interested in doing vehicles and maybe even interested in Aetherdrift. So let me know what your thoughts are and what you're hoping to see from Aetherdrift. So until next time, keep slinging those spells.